There are going to be some major changes to the law school admissions process over the next few years. Hey, what's up everybody? Steve Schwartz here from LSAT Unplugged, joining you today to share my law school admissions predictions over the next couple of years. There are going to be some major changes. I'd love to break them down for you in this video. But before I get into it, a little bit about LSAT Unplugged. We offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. Check out the links below this video to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd love to help you out. So the reason I'm making this video today is that I've noticed a number of major law school admissions trends over the past couple of months. I'd love to clue you into what all of these mean for the upcoming law school admissions cycle. I follow the news pretty closely. Every single day I'm checking the major law school admissions news outlets to stay on top of what's going to be coming along in the next couple of years to affect the LSAT prep world in general, the law school prep world, and of course, all of this in service of you, the applicant. I'm here for you and want to update you on what's happening so you can be as prepared as possible for what's to come. I see three major areas where there are going to be significant changes in the LSAT prep world and the law school admissions world. The first is that law school application essays are going to become a lot less important over the next couple of years. The number one reason being the rise of AI chatbots like ChatGPT, which make it difficult for admissions officers to evaluate an applicant's writing ability. Previously, admission officers were able to look at not just the personal statement, but also the diversity statement, optional essays, addenda, resume, letters of rec, all of those being reliable sources of an applicant's personality, their background, and their writing ability. And only a select few could afford fancy private admissions consultants to help them put together the strongest applications possible. Now, AI chatbots like ChatGPT have democratized access to not just editing and proofreading, but also the initial rough draft formation as well. Some law schools like University of Michigan have banned AI outright. Others like Arizona have vocally embraced and welcomed the use of the technology in the application process. But truth be told, no one, not even Michigan, can really determine whether an applicant has used AI or not in the writing process. And so as a result, law schools will have no choice but to heavily discount everything that they encounter in an applicant's application essays. Additionally, law schools are no longer using diversity statements as part of the application because of the Supreme Court's ban on race-based affirmative action. They have replaced the diversity statement with a wide variety of different optional essays, and these essays are oftentimes unique to each school, meaning that if an applicant wants to apply to the same number of schools this cycle as they would have in previous cycles, they now have a lot more application essays they have to write, which means they're going to rely on, you guessed it, AI chatbots like ChatGPT to help pick up the workload. In short, we have a discounting of application essays. The LSAT writing sample will become the one place admission officers can get a more accurate read of an applicant's true writing ability. But since this isn't scored, law schools will still, of course, fall back on the LSAT as the true objective measure of an applicant's abilities in the admissions process, since this is the one objective number they can look at. GPAs are, of course, significantly inflated and applicants have different majors, but the LSAT score is, and always has been, the one number law schools can rely on to gauge an applicant's abilities and compare applicants from different backgrounds. So my first prediction in summary is application essays will become less important. My second prediction is that LSAC will remove or radically change the logic game section in the middle of 2024. For those who aren't aware, back in 2019, LSAC settled a lawsuit with a blind test taker who had sued them, claiming he was at an unfair disadvantage because he could not benefit from diagramming on the logic game section the way that other test takers can. LSAC settled the lawsuit in the fall of 2019 and agreed to complete research and development into a new version of the test without the current logic game section in the next 4 years. The end of that 4-year period is the fall of 2023, and LSAC makes major changes to the LSAT typically at the beginning of their testing year. LSAT testing years run from July to June of the following year, And so we can reasonably expect that LSAC will introduce their new version of the logic games section in July of 2024. We've already seen LSAC conduct a number of different tests or experiments trying out new kinds of logic games questions. They did this on the June 2022 LSAT as well as the November 2022 LSAT, and then they ran a field study in December of 2022 trying out their new bizarre versions of what the logic games section could ultimately become. LSAC has told us they will give us significant notice, several months, prior to implementing any changes to the LSAT. So we can expect that sometime in December, maybe January, LSAC will announce the upcoming changes to the logic games section, and they will release a handful of sample questions showing applicants what the new logic games section will look like. Of course, that will not be nearly the quantity of questions you have available to you relative to the current logic games. You have nearly 400 released logic games in the current format, since there are nearly 100 released exams with 4 games per exam. So if at all possible, I do recommend that you aim to be done with the LSAT before the changes to the logic game section, because you'll have a lot more material available to you now with the current format than there will be for those taking the LSAT in July 2024 and beyond. So in summary, my second prediction here is that there will be major changes to the LSAT logic game section starting in July 2024. And my third prediction relates to the test optional movement. The American Bar Association has for several years now floated the idea of removing the requirement that law schools use a valid and reliable admission test, such as the LSAT, for admissions purposes. They made their biggest steps in this direction about 1 year ago in the fall of 2022, where they proposed an amendment to Standard 503 that would remove the requirement that schools use a valid and reliable admission test like the LSAT. This was to a vote. The ABA's Legal Education Committee approved it. However, there was a last-minute amendment to that measure, which would delay the implementation of the removal of the requirement until the fall of 2025. The ABA was supposed to vote on this at the beginning of 2023. They postponed the vote, and so it seems they've once again kicked the can down the road, delaying their implementation of the removal of that requirement. So in short, although there's been a lot of headlines and noise about removing the LSAT requirement, the ABA still has not officially removed the requirement, not even when they could still have 2 years before that removal went into effect in fall of 2025. It's also worth noting here that even if the ABA removes the requirement that law schools use a test like the LSAT for admissions, it's possible that law schools will still require it anyway. Law schools will still be free to require the LSAT whether or not the ABA requires them to do so, and law schools weigh the LSAT quite heavily in the admissions process, even though no one requires them to weigh it heavily. They could, if they wanted, consider the LSAT as 1% of an applicant's chances, but instead they weigh the LSAT more heavily than undergraduate GPA. So law schools presumably find the LSAT useful in evaluating applicants, and of course they find it useful in helping them boost their own standing in the US News rankings, which weighs LSAT scores and GPAs of matriculating students. So my third prediction here is that the ABA will not actually remove the LSAT requirement for a couple of years, and even if and when they do, law schools will still likely require the LSAT because they currently value it quite highly, and because they will still be permitted to do so even if the ABA does not require them to do so. So again, my third prediction here is that the LSAT is here to stay, and law schools will still require it for the foreseeable future. So in summary, my 3 predictions: number 1, application essays will become a lot less important. Prediction number 2, LSAC will remove the logic game section or radically change it beginning in July of 2024. And prediction number 3, the LSAT will still be required by law schools for the foreseeable future. Anyway, folks, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to see it. Maybe you know someone who has been looking at application essays and spending a bit too much work on them relative to other parts of the application, like, of course, the LSAT. Maybe you know someone who's aiming to take the LSAT in the summer of 2024. Of course, you want to encourage them to take the LSAT prior to the radical changes to the logic game section. And of course, maybe you know someone who's been hoping, crossing their fingers, the LSAT requirement will be removed. Let them know that, of course, the LSAT is here to stay for the foreseeable future. So if you found the video helpful, please share the link with someone else in your LSAT prep course, in your LSAT study group. It could make a major difference for them getting a better LSAT score and getting into the law school of their dreams, changing the direction of their entire legal career. In the meantime, folks, that's all for now. I wish you all the best, and take care.